Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, nice to see you. Welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Can you believe we're right back here in session again?
Yes.
You know, it used to be, it was 18 months ago because, you know, normally we would end in May. Of course, last time we ended December 5th, I think. So it seems like it was just yesterday.
That's right. It was basically a year ago.
Yeah, it was a year ago.
So I want to start on border security.
Yes.
We saw Governor Abbott deploy an additional 400 plus troops to the border yesterday. We saw today he directed DPS to send tactical strike teams along with Homeland Security agents to find about 5,400 criminals who are in the U.S. illegally. What more should we expect to see, and why do you believe these are important?
So the people who cross the border illegally, many of them, we're not casting this on all of them, but many of them were serious felons, criminals, gang members, potential terrorists, because we know we apprehended, you know, terrorists in the last 4 years of Biden. So we need to round all of those up that we can find. And it would be no different, Jack, than if you had a crime wave in Dallas or Fort Worth. You would expect the police department and the state to help to focus on that crime wave and bring those people to justice. So that's what we're doing. And there are 1,000 of them all over the country. In Texas, as you know, we've invested a lot of money, 8 to 10 to 12 billion, depending how far you go back, to really protect Texas, but also protecting America. And so now we finally have a partner in the White House. You know, it was refreshing. The day after the inauguration, I was there for the inauguration, and I was at the White House the next morning. We never got invited for the last 4 years. We basically had zero contact with Biden. And when President Trump was there the first term, we had great cooperation. So this is Texas and the president working together. I said all along in interviews before the inauguration that on day one the border would be shut down. And for all intents and purposes, it is.
Lieutenant Governor, what other programs should Texans expect to see as all this plays out?
Whatever it takes on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. We are determined to secure the border with President Trump. We're determined to stop terrorists from coming into this country and apprehend those who are on the terrorist watch list that the Biden administration didn't do. We are determined to round up the gang members and the criminals, the rapists, the child sex offenders, the murderers. We're determined to do it. And whatever it takes, Jack, this is I don't think the public totally has their arms around how many people in this country have crossed the border in the last 4 years. Is it 10 million? Is it 11, 12? We think it's higher because remember, when they give you the numbers, that's the numbers that they actually had an encounter with someone. But the thousands across the border in Texas that we didn't even see, besides the ones we did see and got away. Remember, our border, Jack, with Mexico is longer than the distance from Atlanta, Georgia to Maine. Now, it's not a straight line, but we have over 1,200 miles of border with Mexico. We don't have someone every eighth of a mile. So when you know you had 10 million encounters and another 2 million gotaways, well, how about the other ones that came in? And so we are focused on it, Jack. The number one job that Greg Abbott, I have, any governor, any mayor, any lieutenant governor, anyone should have, is public safety. Public safety. And the Biden administration has put our citizens at risk in Texas and America, and we're all over it.
What do you make of, we saw protests in Dallas and Fort Worth over the weekend. People say they are scared. And what do you say to them?
I don't say anything to them. Were they out there having a rally for Laken Riley, who was killed, or Jocelyn Nungahree, who was a 12-year-old girl tortured and under a bridge and raped for 2 hours and thrown in the river by illegal immigrants? Where were they then? You know, look, if a country doesn't have a border, you don't have a country. And we haven't even talked about the 100,000 deaths and more from fentanyl that's coming into this country. Joe Biden and the Democrats let the border wide open for everyone who wanted to come in. And some people they actually invited, flew them on a plane from Venezuela. It turned out to be gang members. And then you have 300,000 children or more that the Biden administration can't find. Today, as we do this interview, they're either in a sweatshop somewhere or sadly, they may be going through an ordeal of being raped many times a day. That's happening right now, Jack. And we're fed up with it, and we're going to do something about it.
Wanted to ask you about Governor Abbott's request to get reimbursed by Congress for the $11 billion that the state has spent. You talked to President Trump, Have you mentioned this to him, and what is his reaction?
Well, I mentioned it to him in McAllen, Texas in 2017. So we go a ways back on that. And I believe if the president could write the check, he'd write the check. And at the time, it was when he couldn't get any funding for the wall. And I said, you know, Mr. President, we'll send you a bill for everything we've spent up to that time. And if you pay us, then we can build the wall, and then you can pay us for the wall. So if you can't get the money from Congress. So I hope Congress, they should reimburse us, because we've been defending America when we shouldn't have had to spend your viewers' taxpayer dollars. But it's up to Congress to do that. And
it's all controlled by Republicans.
well, let's hope it happens. We're going to sure push for it, for sure. I know Senator Cornyn, Senator Cruz, and our Congress delegation, congressional delegation, are going to work on it too.
School choice.
Yes.
The House and Senate both proposed $1 billion
Yes.
for education savings
Yes.
accounts to allow
Yes.
some students to attend private school. And just in the last couple of weeks, that number has seemed to have gone up from like 700 million. So talk to me about how the number went up, and how much money do you envision the state spending in the next several budget cycles?
So let me give you, I'm glad you asked the question, let me give you the numbers on what we spend on public education and the numbers of children. Because I'm so tired of hearing this worn out phrase that we want to undermine public education. We spend a little under 40 billion for public education. We're going to be spending 1 billion on school choice. Public education has 5.5 million kids in it, and school choice will have less than 90,000. There's no way that we're undermining public education. And we didn't take this money out of the education fund. It's a new fund that we created. So it didn't come away from public education. We're fully funding public education. And once again, last session, I had a bill on the table that the House killed on the last day that would have given every teacher in the state a $3,000 raise, and teachers in rural Texas, where there's a $10,000 pay gap between big districts and small, to give them an extra $7,000 to close that gap. So we have given teachers more raises than any time in history since 19 from the Senate and myself, because I believe teaching is a noble profession. They're professionals. They should be paid like that. So it doesn't, first of all, I want to set the record straight. 5.5 million kids, 40 billion, or 1 billion for 90,000. And they say, well, it's just going to get bigger, and it's going to get bigger. They said the same thing over school, charter schools, public charter schools. Well, it's going to destroy public education. Well, it didn't. They said the same thing over homeschooling. Do you know that back in the 70s and 80s, it was against the law to homeschool your child? And so every time there's something to compete with public education, the sky's falling, it's terrible. No, this is crazy. We have more kids in public school and more funding for public schools than most states have people. So, and we raised the money, we raised it to a higher level because it didn't pass the last time out of the House. We passed it out of the Senate, so we lost 2 years. So we took it up a notch, and we had a little bit more money to work with the surplus.
How confident are you that it will pass the House this time? I know the Senate has passed it repeatedly.
Dustin Burrows says he's going to be a conservative speaker and pass school choice. We'll pass it. In fact, as we sit here today, I'm not sure when this is airing, but we're having a school choice hearing today already, 2 weeks into session, and we're going to pass it off the floor next Wednesday, and we're going to send it over there like a rocket ship next week.
So several days after the governor is slated to give his state of the state.
Yes. School choice be out.
And I wanted to, you talked about teacher.
And by the way, just to be clear,
Yeah.
82% of Republicans support it in all polling, about 65% of independent voters, and almost 50% of Democrats. School choice, primarily for children with disabilities, and I've been working on a charity, Be an Angel, in Houston since 1988 for children with disabilities. I know that topic very well. Some public schools can handle your child if they have a disability, others can't. Those parents need it. For children who are in failing schools. And most of our schools in Texas are very good, and we have some great ones, but we have 9,000 campuses, 1,200 school districts, 365,000 teachers. In any business, you're going to have great, most in the middle, and some at the bottom. We're trying to impact those students who are in schools that are failing or can't meet the students' needs, as well as open it up for everyone, because you could even have a child in an A or B school, but maybe they're getting bullied. Maybe they're not connecting. Nationally, only 3%, Jack, of all the other 33 states that have school choice, about 3% of parents opt for school choice because most of them like their schools and the kids don't want to leave their friends. So it's a small number, and it's not the end of public education.
And you talked about teacher pay raises
Yes.
before.
Yes.
$4,000 is being offered this time by the Senate.
Yes, we raised
it. And then an extra $6,000.
Yes, to get to the 10.
Right, for the rural teachers.
Yeah, for the rural teachers.
I was reading a report by TEA, its annual report, that found 56% of the 30,000 new teachers that are hired in the state every year, 56% are uncertified, no classroom experience whatsoever.
Right.
Should the state incentivize, give more money to new teachers who actually have an undergraduate degree, who have that classroom
Jack,
training?
I passed that bill in 2015. And today, if you will be a math teacher or science teacher, we need the STEMs. We don't need more and more history teachers or more phys ed teachers. We need math teachers and science teachers. If you'll go and get your 4-year degree and agree to teach for 8 years, we'll pay for your college education. That's been on the books for 9 years.
And that's in the state of Texas.
It's in the state of Texas, yeah. I passed that bill.
Property tax relief.
Yep.
The Senate has proposed raising the homestead exemption from $100,000 to $140,000, $110,000 for seniors to $150,000. And I don't think the House has proposed similar legislation. Are we going to see a fight over this like we did last session?
Well, it shouldn't be, because for every billion, see, I don't want to go deep in the weeds here, but compression is a term. People say, what's compression? It's just lowering your school tax rate. For every $1 billion, Jack, of compression that we spend to lower the tax rate, a homeowner gets $29 savings. Every $1 billion of the homestead exemption, they get $110 savings. So if you're going to spend $3 billion, say, this session on more property tax relief, you will get $330 for the homestead exemption, and you will get, what's the number there? You'll get $90, 3 times 29, $87. So if I'm going to spend $3 billion in property tax relief, I want to give homeowners $330 and not $87. It makes no sense. This whole idea of compression it's just cost too much money. And homestead exemption, the difference also is homestead exemption is in the Constitution. Remember, the people voted for it.
Right.
That means it can never be taken away. But compression, it's just a statute. It's not in the Constitution. So all this compression that the House has wanted to pass over all these years, it can all be taken back one day. First time you have a downturn. So we have to be responsible to how we do this. But if right now, people always ask this question about appraisals. Appraisals, 99% of the people out there, they don't matter anymore because we capped school funding at 2.5%, the local, and we capped cities and counties at 3.5%. So we're making up the difference. So because of that, when you get your appraisal bill in the spring, don't worry about that. Look at your tax bill. And if everyone watching will go back last year and look at their appraisal bill and their tax bill, and everyone's different, you will see that your school taxes over the last couple of years have gone down 41% across the board for everybody. And so, in the average home, and depending where you live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the suburbs could be 400,000, could be 600,000, statewide is 335. But when you take 100,000 off a $300,000 home, you're only paying taxes on 200,000.
So why do we still hear people saying their taxes still went up, even with that?
So one of the things we have to address, some counties and some school districts will look for a waiver to increase their taxes, mostly the county taxes. So look, we're focused on school taxes, which are 60% of your bill. So we've cut school taxes by 41%. But I can't control each county, but we're going to work on that this session. We have a cap of 3.5%. They can't grow, but they've been using any excuse they can to go around that cap. So that's the answer. But you can look at your tax bill. I live in Harris County, so they give you a 5-year run. My value of my home is going up, and my school property taxes have gone down.
So you're putting counties and cities, I would imagine, on notice?
Absolutely.
How so? What can they expect?
Well, you can't. For example, Harris County, we gave homeowners last session, and when you said, did we fight for it last session? Yes. 31 senators and myself refused to yield on that. And we fought and fought and fought, and we said, we're not giving up on the homestead exemption for the folks out there. Because our tax cut with homestead was about $1,300 to $1,400, depending if you were a senior or not. And the all compression tax cut the House wanted was $700. So what would you all rather have, a $1,300 cut or a $700 cut? We're going to fight for that, and we're going to do the same thing this session.
What about sales tax relief? Because now obviously not everybody owns a home,
Right.
and so they're not going to feel that. So what about the idea of, increasing exemptions on some, sales tax on some items? I saw the University of Houston released a poll, showed people say, hey, well, what about reducing the cost, eliminate sales tax on the first $100 of school textbooks, HVAC systems, pet food? What do you think of those
we have
ideas?
sales tax back to school days already.
Well, these are on textbooks.
Oh, I can't speak to everything that's on that list. For the most part, people going to school don't buy their textbook. The schools give it to them, so I'm not sure what that means. People don't buy their textbooks at K through 12. We'll always look at those things, but we have a couple of tax-free days now. And you know what's really interesting? On the back-to-school tax-free day, or weekend, we actually bring in more sales tax than any other weekend because people go out and buy everything else. And, they go to restaurants, they put gas in their car. It's pretty interesting. So, look, we'll look at all those things, Jack, but a state can only run itself on three ways. Property tax, we don't have a statewide property tax, or not. Income tax, we don't have an income tax, and we're not. We put a stake through the heart of any income tax. It would take a big, overwhelming vote by the citizens out there to have an income tax. That's not going to happen. We're not going to pass it. Or sales tax. You have to fund the government. So that's what we have with the sales tax, but wherever we can, we want to save people money. But that fuels, in fact, we use our sales tax collection to buy down the property taxes. I mean, where do you think we get our money from? That's where we get the money from, most of it. So we're actually using sales tax collections to be able to pay for that $100,000 homestead exemption we did last time.
I want to ask you about something that a lot of people are talking about, and that is the cost of insuring a home and cars. They've gone through the roof, as you know. What can the state do about this without necessarily chasing insurers away from the state like we've seen in other states?
Jack, it's a real difficult problem. I know my own home. I had a hard time finding someone to insure my own home, and the costs have gone through the roof. Part of it is, we've had year after year after year, about 5 years of some natural disasters. And, in California, before those fires, you hear all these stories with insurance companies terminated their policies.
Right.
And they're really, in a terrible situation. If we overplay our hand as a state, these are all private companies. They can just say, okay, we're pulling out of the state, and then we don't have any home insurance. So you got to get a balance here that we have to keep them, but we've also got to hold them accountable for the rates. And we do have an insurance commission that looks at the rates. But no, it is between your homeowner's insurance, your car insurance that you mentioned, your utility bill, and then for those who live in mud districts, if they have a mud bill or a water bill, it's expensive. And we're looking at what can we do to get insurance rates down because they are crippling. I totally agree with you. But we also have to have some insurance companies in Texas. People don't want to be without insurance.
I also want to ask you about abortion. You said a couple of weeks ago that lawmakers may need to make the law more certain for doctors. What do you have in mind?
I'm letting Brian Hughes work through that language, but I do know that he felt that there was some gray area. We're a pro-life state, but we don't want any doctor feeling like if they're trying to save the life of a mother that they don't do it because they're afraid that they're going to violate some law and go to jail. So we need to just make that really clear. It's very few cases. During a political season, you see all these ads and all this stuff. It's very, very rare, actually, where, it's like a few cases, maybe a month in the whole state, where life is in danger, at least the last statistics that I saw. So we need to protect those women who are in a dangerous life situation, and the doctors need to be able to do what they should do.
There were reports that 3 women died.
Yeah, I can't verify them, and I don't know what the details were, but nothing has come to my desk that's been proven. It doesn't mean it didn't happen, but we want to be sure that doesn't happen.
Affordable housing is something
it's going to be a priority bill of mine.
What can the state really do to create an atmosphere that's going to lower the cost of housing?
Well, one of the things you can do is on lot size. So some cities require you to have a certain size lot. Well, when you buy a house or build a house, a big part of the cost is the dirt. it's the land. Other cities do not have that restriction. And we have some counties that have those restrictions. So we believe that you should not set your lot size as so big that it makes, you got to build a $700,000 house on it or $800,000 house. Smaller lot sizes, smaller homes to make them more affordable. If you're a school teacher or a policeman in Dallas County, you probably can't afford to live in Dallas County. And that's the way it is in some of our cities. So that is a priority of mine. We're working on a package of bills to address that issue because we have to make it affordable. I grew up in a 12-foot wide home in Baltimore a long time ago. Those white marble step homes you see sometimes in movies. 3-story, the basement and 2 rooms, but it was 12 foot wide, and there were row homes all stacked together. I thought I had a great house. I look back on it and say, how did I live in a square 12-foot wide home, But we can build, and I'm not talking about tiny homes, but we can build reasonable sized homes that people want to live in on a small lot to make houses more affordable. But if cities and counties demand that you have to have this size lot and you have to build a 3,500 square foot house on it, that's a real problem. We're going to address that.
So you're talking about basically telling cities and counties that you cannot have those restrictions.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're working on. But I haven't seen the final bill language, still in a draft. But there's a package of bills we're looking at. There's 4 or 5 things we can do to make housing more affordable.
The water, everybody's talking about that. Every lawmaker I speak with.
Sounds like I'm going to have a busy year, Jack.
It does. But the state has budgeted about $2.5 billion, both the House and the Senate, for water infrastructure. And I'm wondering, is that enough, first of all,
It's
when
never
you look
enough.
30
never
years
enough.
out?
Nothing we ever do is enough, by the way. We don't have enough roads, we don't have enough water. It's because we're a growing state and a big state. So we put $1 billion into water last year. We put, a couple of years ago, we created other water programs. I think it was 2017 or 19. So we've been doing a lot on it. But we have to keep focused on it because, we got to protect the grid and we got to be sure we have water. And so on water, the one thing we don't have, Jack, that we will do after this session, we'll pass this session in the Senate. I think the House will agree, and that is we don't have a steady stream of funding. So, for example, for roads, TxDOT told me when I got elected in 2015, we can't build roads if we don't know if the next legislature is going to slash our budget. So we need a steady stream of money. So the voters passed I think it was Prop 1 and Prop 2 or Prop 7, whatever number it was back then. And so we take part of the money in the rainy day fund that comes in from oil and gas and it automatically goes to roads. So that way TxDOT can plan. Well, right now, if you and I were commissioners, overseeing water, we don't have a steady stream of money. So how do we plan? So we want to create a steady stream of money that will flow into being able to build long-term projects. But when you look at the water needs of Texas, they're significant. And so this is a session, Jack, it's going to be different than other sessions. Lots of times there's sexy bills, the headline bills that everybody wants to talk about, whatever it is. This time it's about affordable housing, it's about water, it's about the grid. These are things that aren't very sexy, but you have to roll up your sleeves and get them done for today and for the long-term future.
I wanted to ask you about the grid because you have proposed, the Senate and the House have proposed an extra $5 billion to build natural gas-fired power plants.
Yes.
But that takes time. And I'm wondering, what is the state doing? Because we get our cold snaps, we get our hot snaps, obviously, in the summer. And what is the state doing between the time it takes to, get a power plant up and running?
It takes 3 to 4 years. You got to take in the transmission lines if there's not a transmission line to tap into to build those. We do it faster than any other state, but it still takes time. Well, the Senate tried to pass this in 2021 and the House killed it. And it always sounds like I'm saying the House killed it. It's the facts. We passed this. We had the vision to do that. We should have started in 2021 and we'd already have a plant going online in the next year. But you do what you can. And so we passed the bill out again last time and it did pass. And we had $39 billion worth of projects that said, hey, we'll build $39 billion worth of projects. We put $5 billion in, and a lot of people said, Dan, your plan's not going to, it was my plan. They said, Dan, no one's going to do this. Well, $39 billion worth of dollars, people wanted to do it. And so we're putting another $5 billion in. And I'm not so sure we shouldn't put another $5 billion in out of the rainy day fund on it, because we really need to jumpstart this. You know, it's real interesting with this what's it called, deep seat? What's the name of the?
Oh, the AI?
Yeah, the AI. All of a sudden, you know, the stocks have dropped dramatically in some of these chip companies and even in companies like some of our utility companies, because now they're saying, well, maybe we don't need all that extra power. I'm not sure. I don't trust what the Chinese are doing at any moment in time. It's a Chinese company. So the forecast for how much more power we need, I'm still sticking to we need a lot more. But what happened just this week may change the projections out for data centers and AI and crypto mining. It may. Look, we should
How
be.
soon will you know that, though? I mean, is that
Well,
something that you've told?
Well, we don't. So we're going to prepare as if it's the same. So we
Okay.
have 85,000 megawatts of power now. ERCOT told us last year we needed 110 by 2030. Then they upped it to 150. You know, this year they upped it, or last year. And so now, you know, that's almost doubling what we have. Well, you have to get there through some conservation, got to build more plants, and you have to regulate some of the people who are coming into the state, make sure the data miners and the crypto, that they have their own power. Like, go to West Texas, tap right into natural gas. I mean, it's easy to do without even dealing with the grid. So we're going forward, but I just know that what happened this week is potentially going to impact what happens in the future.
So have you picked up the phone and called ERCOT to say, hey, are you going to start
As soon as
looking
I
at
finish this interview, I'm going to talk with the head of ERCOT.
about this?
Well, it was a scheduled meeting. It was about all of these things. But this is a new topic on the table. We were a little shocked when he said, his name is Pablo Vega. We were a little shocked when he said last year you need 110, and he came in this year and said 150. That's 40,000 more megawatts of power, and we only have 85 now, so 85,000.
You spoke before about Speaker Burrows.
Yes.
And you really got very involved in the speaker's race.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering why. And also,
You're talking about in the primary?
well, even afterwards, even after Dade Phelan.
Yes.
You,
After he quit.
After he dropped out, you got
So that's
there.
two speakers that have hit the dust since I've been lieutenant governor.
So why
Joe
is it?
Strauss, Dave. Yeah.
And so, but Dennis Bonnen as well.
Well,
but
we had a good relationship, but that you know,
that's what I was.
that
gonna
was a
ask.
whole nother issue.
That's what I was going to ask you
Yeah,
about,
I wasn't
because
involved in that.
you and Governor Abbott and then Speaker Bonnen in 2019, you had a news conference out in on the front lawn
Yeah,
of the
it was good.
governor's mansion.
I always asked Joe Strauss to do that. He would never do it.
And so,
was
what
good.
about Speaker Burrows? I mean, because you made a lot of comments even before and after he was elected. You know, you spoke out about Democrats, more Democrats voting for him than Republicans. And so I'm wondering, how does this impact your relationship? And are you going to start weekly breakfasts?
Well, we're going to have breakfast tomorrow morning. The governor and I, you know, those breakfasts ended last year because, quite frankly, I don't need to say anything more negative about Dade. He's gone. I mean, he's still here, but he's not speaker. So I'll leave it at that. But those meetings should really be substantial meetings and, you know, decision-making meetings and planning meetings. And I think that's why the governor decided not to have them anymore. But look, I'm going to give Dustin every chance to do what he said he was going to do, be the most conservative speaker ever. But my concern, and every Republican's concern, but look, most of your viewers out there, they don't care about the process. They don't care about, you know, how things work. Just get it done. But we're a Republican state. In fact, President Trump got 500,000 more votes than Greg Abbott or I've ever gotten. So, and we won, I think, 31 out of 32 statewide Republicans, you know, judicial seats. First ever Republican out of the Valley in the Texas Senate, a couple of House seats, a congressional seat. So we just ran the table in November. And now we have a Republican speaker picked by Democrats. To our knowledge, I've done the research, and maybe there's another state out there somewhere, in the history of the nation, only once in Alaska, in the history of the nation, has the minority party who lost the elections pick the speaker of the majority party. And this has been going on since Joe Strauss. So you've got 88 Republicans, you have 62 Democrats. So in my world, 88 Republicans should pick the speaker. It takes 76 votes to be speaker. And what's happened since Joe Strauss and all the way up till now, and Dustin Burrows did it also, he had 52 Republicans vote against him out of 88. So he got elected by Democrats. So he owes his election to Democrats. I owe my election to 5 million people. Greg Abbott owes his election to 5 million people who voted for us. I don't get mad at the House because they kill a Senate bill. I get mad at the House if they kill a bill because we don't pass a bill that the people didn't ask us to pass. So when the House kills legislation, they're killing what the people voted for Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick to pass. And so I'm fighting, that's who elected me. That's who I owe my allegiance to. The Speaker owes his allegiance to the Democrats. They didn't vote for him because they like him. I'm sure Dustin's a nice guy, but you know what I mean? They felt like they could get something out of it. And so the new rules, some people think they have more power now than they had before. So I didn't have a personal problem with Dustin. I had a problem with this continuing speakers elected by Democrats in Texas of all places. And if he can work his way through this and pass all the bills that we send over to him, well then I'll pat him on the back at the end. But and I'll give him a chance to do it, and I'll work with him. But we'll see.
And my last question to you, Lieutenant Governor, is you said you are running for re-election in
Yes,
2026.
you bet.
What more do you want to accomplish?
I want to be sure that I leave Texas in really good hands and a good position financially, property tax standpoint, school choice. I want to be sure that I can walk away from this and say, I've done my job. We've done a lot of really great things, Jack, and I give the credit to the senators, and I have great senators. And 98% of the bills we pass with bipartisan basis. Look, I don't have any Democrat chairs. I have a few vice chairs, but the Democrats don't run our body, but we work with them and they work with us. And we've put more money into mental health care than anyone before. We built, I think, 6 or 7 new mental care hospitals in the state. We've increased school funding $39 billion. When educators say, well, you're not funding us, we've increased it $39 billion. We've raised teacher pay more than before. We passed every pro-life bill, every Second Amendment bill. We got campus carry, open carry, constitutional carry. There are no abortions in the state, so that's more little Texans are living every year. So we've done a lot of things, but there's a lot more to do. And so we're a fast-growing state, and so I'll run in 26. And if the people elect me, I'll be back in 2 years. But I love this job, and I have a great Senate, and I love Texas. I careful how I say this. I surely could have gone to Washington in some capacity and doing something. But I get to sleep in my bed in Texas every night, or not only in my bed. When I'm here in Austin, I can't. But I have 8 grandchildren in Texas. I love what I do, being Lieutenant Governor of Texas. I once told President Trump, and we have a great relationship, he said, Lieutenant Governor of Texas, what that's all about. I'm the only legislator that's elected by the people in the entire country. There are other lieutenant governors who get elected statewide like me, but they have no power. The Lieutenant Governor of Texas, I'm not talking about me personally, the office gets to pick the chairman of all the committees, the members of all the committees, which bills go to which committees and which bills come to the floor and write the budget with the finance chair. That's a lot of fun and a lot of hard work. And nowhere else can you do that, So a statewide elected official, and I told Dustin this, so I said, Dustin, I'm elected by 5 million people. That's who I represent. You're elected by 150 House members, mostly Democrats who voted you in. You represent a different crowd. And so hopefully we can make all that work. But I've been very blessed for this job, and as long as I have good health what I do, let me say that again. And I have good health, and as long as that continues, and I feel great, we'll be back.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, thank you so much.
You bet.
We appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.